I've got one flame to burn, one race that I can say I ran.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 21047.com podcast. My name is Keith Cartwright. I am the host of this show, and I'm really glad to have you along listening in today, wherever it is that you're listening and whenever it is that you might be listening in. Today's episode is sponsored by my very latest Patreon supporter, Mr. Sid Bush. I'm really thankful to have Sid come on as a supporter. I actually interviewed Sid, back in February, maybe into March, right before the Little Rock Marathon, where I had the pleasure of meeting Sid in person. Sid is out there running almost every weekend, sometimes multiple times over a weekend, to honor our fallen vets, our fallen war heroes, and I've just really developed a real appreciation and a friendship with Sid. And so to have him back me in this 21047.com effort really means a lot to me. Sid just comes with a lot of credibility in my life, just a lot of genuineness that I appreciate. And so thank you, Sid. And Sid, like I said, sponsors me through Patreon. Patreon is a platform where fans, friends, family, I have all of those who can come and support me financially, back this 21047.com effort to really run to dark with the light of these stories that I find mostly in the running community, many times with people that I run with and for. And so the financial backing just allows me to set aside more time in my life to pursue these stories, go different places, chase them down. And so I have a couple of jobs in my life, and one of them's part-time. And so the money I get from this allows me to carve out time away from the other part-time job and pursue these stories, which I'm really passionate about, and I think they really bring some light to other people, and it makes me really, really grateful for all the Patreon supporters out there. So thank you. And I know that's not everybody's deal. Not everybody can do that, and I'm equally grateful for the folks who listen to these stories, read these stories, participate in them, share them, pass them on to other people, because in the end, that's ultimately what I want to happen with this entire effort, is that light gets out there, and that takes a lot more than financial backing. It mostly takes people willing to help me spread that light. So if you want to check out Patreon, you can go to my website, 21047.com, TWOTIM47.com, click on the Support Me tab, and then you'll get some direction how to get to Patreon. So thank you in advance. And again, thank you, Sid. Love you, buddy. I appreciate it. So today's episode is I'm interviewing Mr. Harvey Dawkins. So my friend Ken Oldendick, I don't know, it's been a couple of months ago, he reached out, and I get these interviews almost always like this one. Somebody reaches out and says, hey, I think you'd really love interviewing this guy, and then I reach out, and almost 100% of the time, these are folks always really interested in sharing their story. So Harvey Dawkins, when Ken sent me his story, Harvey's a triathlete, but he's a triathlete with cerebral palsy, and he's just had a story of overcoming to get to this point of being able to be a triathlete. And not only is he a triathlete, now he's out there running for his own causes, MS in particular. And so anytime I read a story about somebody who's overcome like Harvey Dawkins has, I know immediately that is a fit for this podcast. So I reached out to Harvey. He sent me some information, some videos, such and such on his story, and it was immediate clear to me that I need to get a hold of Harvey Dawkins, and he needed to be on this show. So a couple of days ago, I had the chance to interview Harvey, and I am really excited to share his story today. I think you will be moved by his commitment to his strength. You'll be moved by his inspiration. And so I'm not going to talk too long. I'm going to hand this over to my conversation with Harvey Dawkins. Well, I want to welcome Harvey Dawkins to the 21047.com podcast. So welcome, Harvey. It's good to have you, buddy.
Thank you very much.
So your story actually came to me. A buddy of mine runs a lot of triathlons in the Maryland area up there, and he reached out and said, this Harvey Dawkins, he's an inspiring story. He said, I think he would fit good for your show. And so then I started looking into your story a little bit, and he was absolutely right. And then you and I have connected, and I've got to follow you a little bit this past month, and you definitely are an inspiration. So I look forward to having this conversation and sharing your story. So your story begins, Harvey, that you were born with cerebral palsy. Is that right?
Yes.
And I was reading, your wife had written something, and she said at the age of 3, your parents did what most parents of able-bodied children do. They bought you a tricycle. So what happened when they bought you that tricycle?
Okay. What happened was I felt like my world opened up, because what happened with me was I had a hard time walking. But when I was on my tricycle, I was able to turn the wheels. And that's basically how it all started, because I was able to move the tricycle turning. I found that it was easier to turn the tricycle than what it was to keep my balance. So that just, that propelled it. And then my aunt told me one time that she said that I always, and she's funny, she just told me this recently. She said, Harvey, you always found a way to overcome what you were dealing with. She said, even like when you learned how to get down the steps, you couldn't walk down the steps. So what she said, what you would do, you would just slide your butt down the steps. And she was afraid I was going to fall sometimes, but then she would just watch me, and she said, he got it. And she said, that's how you progress. You always found a way to, when it was an obstacle, you would find a way to get around the obstacle.
And so talk to me about then some of the challenges growing up, and, once you started getting into your middle school and high school years, and, having parents that treated you like you were an able-bodied young man, and sounds like a supportive family all around. Talk to me about some of those challenges growing up and then how you conquered them.
Right. Growing up, it was difficult for my family, because, mind you, I grew up in the 70s, and what they did with kids back then was because I am a learning disabled individual, they just kind of put all of us into one class. And so I was not able to open up and learn as well, because they just kind of just lumped us together and not realizing that we all had different levels of learning. So that made it very challenging for me personally. And then having parents, basically what parents too, doctors told parents or told my mom that I wasn't going to be able to do very much. So that made it harder for her to see where my life was going, but she knew I could ride that bike. So she encouraged me to ride that tricycle and then learn how to ride a bike. It wasn't always easy. I can say it was not always easy, because I always wanted to do what the other kids are doing, playing baseball, soccer, kickball was easy for me, because all I had to do was kick the ball, and I could run. But it was always a challenge with other things. So I just stuck what I knew best, and that was riding a bicycle. And I was free, and I was very good at it.
So talk to me about the first time you discovered, not only can I ride a bicycle, I can ride it a long way, and I can ride it in the midst of these bicycle races with other people. Talk to me about the first time you discovered that.
Okay, I discovered that in a situation, like I said, I had somewhat of a difficult coming up with my learning disability, and it was hard for my parents too, trying to find ways for me to fit in. And so me and my mom had gotten to a little argument or something like that, and I was maybe about 17, and I had bought my first aluminum road bike. It was a Schwinn 564. And I called myself running away. And I lived in Bucks County. I rode my bike all the way down past South Philadelphia. That's when I found out that I could ride a bike very far. So in a negative situation, I learned something very, very important and what was positive, and that was that I could ride a bike. Now, I couldn't ride back. I got real tired by the time I got down the other end of the city. So the police, they brought me back home. And then my mom said to me, "You rode your bike all the way to South Philadelphia? Where were you going?" And I was just like, "I don't know." But then that's when I learned what I could do on a bike. So then I just, it flourished from there. I mean, and it was meant to happen that way.
It's amazing. You know, I talk with a lot of runners who get into these running journeys, and, you know, I'm talking with you who started off with a lot of biking. And it's amazing how many of these journeys start with something that was completely unrelated, really, to becoming a runner or biker. You were running away, had no thought of where this might lead, but it's amazing how many of these, you know, rough times or just challenges that we go through that unlock this door to some greater story, some greater potential. So it amazes me in all of these conversations. So many of them trace back to a triggering moment like you just described, running away and then a ride back in a police car, and then it just unleashed all of these opportunities in your life. Yes,
I still think about that today. It was, like I said, it was a bad situation at home, and yeah, like I said, I was when you are a kid with a disability, especially a learning disability, and you're trying to find yourself. You don't know which way you're going. You see your friends able to drive and get around and hang out with their friends. I mean, not saying I didn't have friends, but they're able to go and do things that you're just not able to do. Like I said, just like driving a car because I have epilepsy. So I was limited. The one thing I wasn't limited in was the bike. The bike had always made it so that I could get around safely, and I had my seizures under control, so they were pretty much under control. So I was able to, again, find a way to get around an obstacle and make it work for me.
So when was the first bike race you entered, Harvey?
Well, it wasn't a bike race. It was a ride for multiple sclerosis. What happened was I had a friend of mine who I used to work with, and she had got MS. And what happened was it started to affect the way she walked and everything. And multiple sclerosis is a very devastating disease, and affects your whole body. And I felt like me having cerebral palsy, looking at her, I can live with CP. It's not going to kill me. But with multiple sclerosis, it kills people. And I just felt like I needed to do something. I wanted to be a part of the solution. And that's when I got into running for the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation, which I've written in, I think I've raised maybe about $10,000, $11,000 in about 12 or 13 years. And riding I did my home ride here in New Jersey from Workcrest Station down to Ocean City and back. It's a 150-mile ride in 2 days. Riding in Miami, from Miami down to Key Largo and back. And then Texas, I've done the biggest ride, one of the biggest MS rides is in Texas. I did Atlanta, Georgia, Virginia. So that just opened things up. So then when I did race, I was just basically racing with a group of guys, like we call them the weekend warriors, where everybody would get together on a Saturday or Sunday, and we would do like maybe 20, 30 miles, and we would let loose and see who could, who was the fastest.
Right. And did I read somewhere where it's your goal to run one of these MS rides in all 50 states?
Yes, that would be a goal. That's something I really would like to do one day. But at the same time, I got tied up with Ironman, and it kind of took over a little bit, you know what I mean? Because I really got good with this too. And one day I would like to maybe be able to do both.
Let me back up just a minute. I want to move on to I want to get the Ironman here in a minute. But so
okay.
This friend that you ran for that had MS, what do you think it was about you, Harvey, that was so moved by this friend's story to get you into these bike races? I'm just curious. There's so many, again, folks that I interview that get moved by other people to challenge themselves, and I'm always interested in just digging in. What was it about you seeing her and just made you think, I have to do something?
She always smiled, even though she was having a difficult time. She never let anything get her down at all. And she knew what the disease was doing to her. So when I looked at her, I just felt like it was something that I had to do. And it made her happy every time she found out that I was doing another MS ride.
Yeah, it's an interesting, the progression of your story so far. And you get in this fight with your mom, and so you do this long runaway bike ride, and then you have this heart for this friend, and so suddenly now you're riding these 150-mile rides for MS. And then at some point it sounds like this turned into even another challenge, taking on these triathlons. Tell me how we got there.
It started over 5 years ago. I always felt like no matter what situations we go through life, you have to find a way to overcome. That's what my whole story has been about, overcoming a situation. I had went through a bad divorce. It was in April, and I just did not want to define that year of the year that I got divorced. So I had met a nice young lady, Nancy. She's my wife now, Nancy Dawkins, and she said, Harvey, you always wanted to, because I talked to her about doing, triathlon, and we went in a bike store one day, and she said, well, get a bike. And I'm like, are you serious? She said, yeah. So I got the bike, and then that year was the first year I did 4 triathlons, sprint triathlons. That's where you have a 400-meter swim, you got a 12-mile bike race, and you got to run a 5K. The very first one, I panicked in the water, and I had one of the lifeguards come up to me and calm me down, and it was cold, and the water was dark. Here in New Jersey, the water is cedar, so you don't see it to the bottom when you're in the lake. He pushed me through, and then I finished. And my girlfriend then, Nancy Kelly, that was her name, and I decided to do it again, and then do another one, and do another one, so that I took the negativity of what was going on with that divorce, and that again turned into something positive. That's what, we don't have any choice. If we don't overcome our situations, they will eat us alive. And if you have over 4,660 some seconds in a day to make something positive happen. You just have to. You have to. And that was something that I learned early, and now I can look back and say that was the year. I don't even think about the divorce. I think about what I did that year. I did 4 triathlons in 1 year. That's my thought of that year when I went through the divorce, when it was finalized.
That's amazing. And so I'm curious, when you switched over and did these triathlons, had you done any swimming before?
I could not swim a lick.
So what did you have to go through? I mean, that had to take a huge commitment on your part then. It wasn't just as simple as saying, okay, I've been doing these long bike rides, I think I'll do triathlons now. If you hadn't ever swam, that was part of the commitment to doing that. You had to learn how to swim. How did that go?
It just took perseverance, getting in the pool, almost every couple of days, learning how to stay afloat, because when you have cerebral palsy, your muscles stiffen up, so you're not relaxed in the water. So that means that you're sinking. So the one thing I had to learn to do was build up my upper body to help me so I would stay afloat so that I could swim, to keep moving. I had to keep moving because my legs were almost, I don't want to say seize up, but getting the brain to kick and to paddle at the same time, for anybody, it can be hard. But then having the CP where the muscles are saying, no, I don't want to do that, you just have to keep doing it. It becomes routine over and over and over again. Even to this day now, I've been doing it for over 5 years. It's a constant mental thing. You have to keep turning and keep turning, and then having people help you with your technique for your swimming and stuff. You got to keep going. You got to keep doing it over and over and over again.
And then with the running piece, how hard is running for you, Harvey, when you get, I mean, the running's the last leg, I assume, so you swim, then you do your bike, and then you run. How hard is the running for you, especially given that it comes at the end of, obviously what is some real physical challenge for you when you get out of that pool and then do that bike?
Right. Everything on my lower end past my legs, everything is stiff. So it's like when I get my body moving, everything loosens up. Now my gait is thrown off, so I might swerve a little bit or a lot. But you just have to keep going. You just have to make your legs run. You just have to keep going. It's challenging, but then once you finish, you're happy. You're happy because I was able to finish and do it.
How many times in a race
I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Nah, it does make sense. How many times in a race do you tell yourself, just keep going, just keep going?
Every minute. Because what happens is when you start to hurt a little bit, or if you start feeling like you're slowing down in the run, your mind starts playing tricks on you. And when you start to feel uncomfortable, the body, the fatigue is saying, okay, won't you stop? You don't need to do this. Just stop. And you have to override everything, your thought process, everything. You have to override it and put it in your head that you're going to finish. You have to turn everything off. Just off. You can't, because it will creep in you so quick. I know when I did the Ironman, the run, the last 5 miles, I was just ready to stop. But then I thought about what a friend of mine had said to me, Mark Saltarelli. He's a friend of mine that works for Home Depot, said that you have to keep moving. You never know who's watching you. And I learned that day with the Ironman, well, not just that one, but all of them, that when people see you finish, what it does to see people see you finish, especially when they see that you have a disability, that moves them. And then I've had so many times where they say, I have a family member that has your disease, or a child that, they have is disabled, and how motivated they were through me. So I gave them hope, and that means a lot.
Listen,
so that kind of, it keeps me going.
Yeah, well, sitting here listening to you, I'm sitting here, so I'm just a runner. I've never did the triathlons, but I've run a couple of marathons. I'm actually sitting here thinking last Friday on my birthday, I went out and decided I was going to run my longest run ever, so I ran 27 miles that day. And I was sitting here listening to you thinking that, just the mental strength that took me that day just to battle my own leg weariness, a little bit of hunger, just going farther than I ever had. And it took some real mental strength from me to overcome that. And so, but now I'm sitting here listening to you and just imagining just how much mental strength, just how mentally strong you really are to overcome. You talk about your key, your story is overcoming. And it's amazing to me. It sounds like you've really developed this really strong attitude, this real strong mental strength to help overcome some of the physical challenges that you have to deal with throughout these races.
They are challenges, but when you have the people come up to you, and even though you're in a lot of pain and everything, but to have the people come up and say thank you, it makes it all worth it. I can't describe the feeling, but it just makes it. And then having all the people, all different nationalities, because I love people. Having all different types of people come up and thank me and give me well wishes. It means so much, and it just makes me want to do it again and again. And if I could touch one person, it makes it all worth it.
Well, obviously you keep doing it, so it must really motivate you. At some point then, it sounds like you moved from even the sprint triathlons then to longer triathlons?
I moved from the sprint straight to the Ironman. I did one Olympic in the middle, but then I had got an opportunity to get in the Ironman last year, and I was like, I gotta take this, because I am also trying to put my name out there in the world as much as possible about showing other people, again, with disabilities what's possible. Not that they have to do what I do, but just whatever makes them tick, do it and be the best at what you can do. And I feel like that's what God has, put me out there to do. And he's like, okay, I want you to do this Ironman. And I was like, okay, well, how am I going to get in? And lo and behold, somebody paid for me to get in, and there I was doing it.
And for folks listening, what are these distances for that bike, swim, and run when we're talking an Ironman?
Okay, the one I do is the Ironman 70.3. The Ironman 70.3 is a 1.2-mile swim. It's a 56-mile bike race and then a half marathon. And you have 8 hours, I think it's 8 hours and 50 minutes to do it, or you get disqualified.
And how many of those have you run, Harvey?
I've done one Ironman, and I'm training for another one this year.
When's the one this year?
Atlantic City. It's in Atlantic City. It's in September.
How's the training going, buddy?
It's going very, very well. I feel like I'm ahead of my schedule a little bit with the swimming, because I need to be able to swim 2,000 meters. That's the training goal. You want to try and get as many times as 2,000 as you can. The bike part, it's only going into May, and I'm already up to doing like 30 miles on the bike pretty comfortably. I want to be faster, but it's coming. And the running is always slow. It's always slow, so I'm just working on it. I have 2 triathlons I have to do before the Ironman. I'm doing Escape the Cape, and that's Delmo Sports is holding that, which I'm also a ambassador this year for Team Delmo, and then I'm doing the Atlantic City Triathlon, which is both these races are Olympic, and those distances are I think it's like a mile swim, 23 on the bike, and I think a 10K run. So these two races are getting me ready for the Ironman at the end of the year.
You know, earlier in our conversation, you said that running or riding those MS rides, riding those long distances on the bike, they helped you find yourself. What have you found out about yourself, Harvey, in doing these bike rides and now transitioning into the Ironman? What have you found out about yourself?
Just how strong I am, how motivated I am. I always felt like I was, but now on a whole nother level, a level that I'm still getting used to, how confident I feel. It's always, I feel like I always had this thing where it took me longer to find my comfort level. Even as a young kid, like it took me where maybe it took one person 5 days. It took me maybe 10 days. Like I'm constantly catching up. But then once I caught up, I felt stronger and stronger and stronger. And I guess that's where it comes from, I guess.
And if there's people out there struggling, maybe it's not a physical disability, maybe they're just struggling with something on their job, maybe they're struggling with a relationship, what would you tell them that they can take away from your story and apply to their own struggles in life?
Don't quit. That's basic. If you quit, if you tell yourself that you can't do something, you're usually right. If you tell yourself you can do something, you're usually right. It's up to you. You can do whatever you want to do, or you won't do whatever you don't want to do. It's sometimes we all have to do something we don't want to do, that we have to do. You got to keep it moving, and you can't think too much about it because it'll eat you alive. You have no choice. You have to keep moving. You got to keep moving.
You know, you talked.
No excuses.
Absolutely. You know, you talked about God pointed you towards this race in September and towards the Ironman. How important is your faith in every day and overcoming your challenges?
100%. And that's the other thing that I should have brought up first, and I'm going to bring it up now. But this isn't about me; it's about God and what He has made possible for me to do. I feel like He had put all these challenges in my life to bring Him glory. And let other people know what is possible through Him if you would just give Him a chance. And I've sometimes had struggle with my faith, but He lets me know every time I do a race and I finish, even if I didn't finish, He was there. That's when I find myself being closest to Him, is when I'm out there pushing, because me and Him talk a lot.
Yeah.
When I'm out there, you know.
No, I've said over and over, my running journey has brought me, and I've been running now for about, I started this late, but I've been running for about 4 years now. And when anybody asks me, you know, what's the biggest takeaway from my running journey, it's been my relationship with God. And it's just because of what you just said. I just spend so much time out there talking with Him. What I say, though, is that I don't know that I talk to Him any more than I used to, but I listen to Him a whole lot more and a whole lot better. I hear Him. I get pointed towards new things. It sounds like you've been pointed towards, you know, taking on new challenges. So that's where that I guess I never knew how important it was to listen. You know, when we talk about praying and this relationship with God, I was always good at talking. I was always good at telling him what I wanted, but I wasn't ever really good at listening. That's what running has done for me.
Yes. I totally, I know where you are with that, because it's the same way with me. I'm always talking about what I want. If I would just stop and listen, when I do that, I find out so much more.
Well, what do you...
And then I get what I want and what I need anyway.
Well, and it sounds like you have found some real fulfillment and understanding that, one, other people are watching you, and two, when they're watching you, they're really having their lives impacted by it. And, you know, in the end, I think if we would all just kind of settle into that being our heart's desire to impact other lives, we'd probably get a whole lot more of what we wanted and a lot easier.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Most definitely.
What do you see happening long term, Harvey? I know you said a minute ago, you mentioned you want to get your name out there. You want to run these bigger races. If you have this big picture dream of what Harvey can do, and you've just said you want to do all of this for God, what's that big picture dream look like for Harvey?
To be a speaker, be a motivational speaker, and to get it out there and tell people what's possible and make it my life. Do my speaking and my racing and just putting out there what's possible. That's my dream.
Well, I look forward to sharing this story and hopefully making more folks aware of this message that you have, and hopefully someday being some small part of making that dream come true, because you truly are inspiring. I'm always moved by people who, especially folks of faith, because it's easy when you're a person of faith to wonder, God, why did I get saddled with this disability? But it sounds like, and I know you have hard days, but it sounds like your attitude is, okay, I've got these disabilities because I have a story that I'm supposed to share, and that story is not that I have a disability. My story is that I'm not a quitter. I'm an overcomer. God helps me with that, and I think that's a powerful story, and I hope that we'll be able to share that with a lot of people, Harvey. I
really, if nothing else comes, it's just getting the word out there and letting people know what they can do. That means a lot to me. And they also can look me up. I have a website that they just type in HarveyDawkins.com, one word. There's more about my story on there. I'm on Google too. They just type in Harvey Dawkins Ironman, and there's a whole lot of stuff about me also on YouTube. And just, whatever helps more to help motivate people.
Well, I will be sure when I publish this, I will include those links and some guidance on how folks can find you. And like I said, I became familiar with you because a buddy of mine who I met through some, crazy circumstances on their own, that he and I would become friends. And he's run some marathons, and like I said, I think he runs some triathlons up there, but he was familiar with your story and touched by it, and so he reached out to me and said, I think you need to talk with this guy. So your story's getting out there, and it's getting out there because other people are seeing it and being moved by it. And just, I hope that keeps spreading, because just sitting here talking with you for 35, 40 minutes, I'm really, inspired by you. I know when I'm out there next time running, feeling tired, I got no reason to quit, right? I got no excuse for quitting, Harvey, so I appreciate it, buddy.
No problem.
Well, thank you for being on. Thanks for sharing your story. We wish you nothing but the best, and I'll be following you. I'm glad we're friends now. I'll be following you as you train this summer and then point towards Atlantic City in September. I'm actually running my first ultra marathon in September, so we both kind of have big September goals on the horizon.
Oh yeah.
Well, we'll go train and attack them together, and I'll be keeping in touch with you. Thanks again, Harvey.
Okay, thank you very much.
Have a great day.
All right, bye-bye.
See you, buddy. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation I just had there with Harvey Dawkins. Like I said, Harvey, from birth to now, is a lifelong story of overcoming. He's an example of what happens when we get supportive people in our life. I think he's a testimony to the power in just deciding I'm not going to quit. I think sometimes that sounds oversimplified until you listen to a guy like Harvey Dawkins, it's not like he just said, I'm going to quit because this race is hard. He has said, I'm not going to quit in spite of a debilitating disease, and one that a lot of people really struggle with and have a hard time with. But Harvey is an inspiration to a lot of people out there, no matter what their struggle is, that life can take on some real special meaning. And not only has he overcome and found meaning in his own life, he's got out there and used his story to shine light and bring light to other stories out there, bring light to other people out there. And I just find that moving, that in a guy who could be kind of wrapped up in his own difficulties, he pours himself in to others. So thank you, Harvey, for taking the time, sharing your story, and I hope others will take as much away from it as I did. So I hope y'all will have a great week. I hope you'll get out there and do some running this week. Set yourself up to overcome your own challenges. And if it's not running you're going to do this week, get out and cheer for somebody. And maybe, I don't know, this is one of those episodes where I guess you didn't have to be a runner to get moved and be inspired by a guy like Harvey Dawkins. So if running's not your deal, I'm glad you're here. Keep coming back. And I just really hope that you all have a great week. If you want to check out some previous episodes of this podcast, again, you can go to my website, TWOTIM47.com, TWOTIM47.com. Until next time, you all have a great week.